Vikings that are on the chopping block. It's not necessarily as simple as, oh, there are like 17 guys who are guaranteed to not make the roster. To my count, there are 43 players with a guaranteed roster spot this coming season. That leaves 48 players, including the one international pathway player, to compete for those 10 spots. Who are the players that are competing? We're going to talk about it here on the Real Forno Show because, quite frankly, isn't a whole lot to talk about here on this 4th of July weekend. So we're going to have some fun, and we're going to kind of start looking really big picture at training camp. Strap on in. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by Tyler Forness, publisher at The Sporting News, contributor on SKOL North's Purple Daily, publisher of Substack Run In Shooter, the host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
You are looking live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, top right corner. He is producer Pumpkin. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean producer Dave. He just happens to be wearing that bright orange shirt. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. This way I can be seen. That's why I wear it.
Hey, you know what? That's a smart business practice. If you can't be seen, how in the world is anybody going to listen? So welcome. We're going to have some fun here today. Look, we're in the doldrums, but we are now in training camp month. So it's going to come quickly. All right. And we are going to take a look at a few different things here today. We're going to talk about all the players on the roster bubble. Okay. I will have a few players that you wouldn't necessarily consider to be on the roster bubble. But to me, it's who does not have a guaranteed 100% concrete spot on this roster. You know who does? A guy like Justin Jefferson. A guy like Christian Darrisaw. Jonathan Grenard. Those guys are guaranteed roster spots unless they kill somebody. And I don't mean that as a joke. I mean, they're going to be here unless they commit an absolutely heinous crime. That's just the nature of what this is. So there are going to be some surprises, and that's okay. It's fine that there are surprises. And it's not even that I think that they're going to be cut or they're not going to have a job. But there is a possibility where they don't. And I think that's important to at least understand and have as a part of the conversation. All right. We're not going to do kickers and punters because I don't think any of them have guaranteed their job yet. So they are on their own little island. We're going to talk about the offense and the defense. And I think that that's going to be really interesting. But I want to talk about this first. Charlie Walters of the Pioneer Press. Your mileage is going to vary how credible you believe he is. I can tell you this much. Based on the people I talk to, I do know he knows a lot of people in the organization. Whether he knows the right people or they give him the right information is up to interpretation because he says some very interesting things. And one of the things that I found interesting that he wrote about this past Sunday, everybody's been talking about it. Cam Akers coming back if he passes a physical. Hey, you know what, Davey? We got 44 people in the room. We started the show late because I had some internet issues that I believe are cleared up. Dave hasn't written anything in the chat saying that I look pixelated, so that's always a good thing. And look, it's 4th of July week. The fact that we have 44 people here is a blessing, and we're very appreciative of all of you. But Cam Akers coming back, Dave. Before I kind of jump into it, what is your initial thought on bringing back Akers after the season he had in 2023?
Well, I think he had a good season in 2023, all until he popped his Achilles. And this is his second one, so it's going to be interesting to see how he recovers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be very interesting to see
I think his age and experience would be good in the running back room.
I also think that it's going to be difficult for Akers in general because it's not one Achilles tear. It's 2 in 27 months. One Achilles tear can be debilitating for a career. 2 can be outright disastrous. And even though you can come back to play in 6 to 9 months, It can take 2 years to be fully healthy to what your new normal is, because you get so much power and explosiveness from your lower half, and that Achilles tendon is kind of the key component to making everything work. Think of your Achilles tendon as your transmission. Yeah, it's not your engine, it's not your chassis, it's not the tires, but it kind of controls everything, keeps everything regulated. That is your Achilles tendon. It keeps everything cohesive. It keeps you being able to do the things that you need to do. Well, if you don't have working ones, Dave, that sucks. That is very bad. And
yeah, it makes it difficult to walk, much less run.
Oh yes. If you've ever seen somebody with an Achilles surgery, so like your foot's normally like this. Well, when you get the Achilles surgery, they basically crank the balls of your feet, the front of your foot, they crank it up. So when they do the Achilles surgery, it's incredibly tight to create that flexion. So then when it heals, then it comes back to a normal level. And it's very difficult to come back from. Ask anybody. I've never personally experienced, thank God, because it sounds awful.
A normal human, it takes about a year.
Yeah. And
I've had a friend that popped one, and that you watch it do the whap, 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 whap up in his calf, and it took him a year. And I mean, there was a long time he was on the scooter.
Let me tell you, I am a normal human. That would not be fun. Trying to corral these dogs without an Achilles tendon. Oh, buddy. No bueno. Odie is sitting right next to me. Well, kind of. He is chewing a bone, and he is drooling up a storm. You know what? Let's excuse my dirty house, my dirty room.
Oh,
there he is.
Odie.
Say hi, Odie. He looked up at the camera.
Yep.
Yeah, Odie is the best dog. You guys all know that. But he wanted to make an appearance here in 4th of July week. So I like the idea of bringing back Cam Akers on a vet minimum, no guarantees. Because with two torn Achilles, I don't know if I can trust him to ever do anything again. And you know what? If we can, that's great. That's awesome. But it's just the reality of the situation. Cam, by all accounts, was a great guy to have in the locker room this past year. At a certain point, being a great guy doesn't mean anything. You got to be good on the field, and I can't trust that he's good on the field yet. Darren Doogie Wolfson reported on one of the scoop sessions on SKOL North, talking about how Akers was working out at TCO, not in the building, but on the field. So if you've ever been to TCO, there are the 4 practice fields on the west side where they do the training camp practices where the fans can go sit and watch. Then there's a stadium on the south side where not only do they have like the night practices, the Minnesota women's soccer team, the Aurora, they play there, high school football games, high school soccer, section games. I think they play state tournament games there as well because it's a very, very nice facility. So he's been practicing there. And you know what? If he comes back, that's awesome. I'd be very happy for the person. But from a business perspective, you got to be really, really careful. And I think that's important to note. I think it's important to be aware of. We'll see how that ends up playing out. Because I genuinely don't know what that's going to mean long term. I don't know what that's going to mean short term. But we'll see. Keep it in the back of your mind. He did tear it in November. I believe it was November 6th against the Atlanta Falcons. And because he tore it in November, that would put his recovery right about now as far as when he'd be fully cleared to play. So, heck, if he can play, let's see what happens. But yeah, that's pretty much all in the news and notes. There's not a lot going on, guys. You're going to hear a lot of scuttlebutt from people talking about, Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy. And a lot of people talking about the Vikings being like the 23rd best team in football. Look, I think they're going to be way closer to the middle of the pack. I'd power rank them around 16 to 18. They're not going to be great, but there's way too much talent to be ranked that low. And even if you don't get...
Hey, I want him ranked that low. As I said yesterday, a lot of people around the nation look at ESPN, and they're the ones that ranked him at 23. And people that will cover teams will think, hey, they're 23rd. Even people on other teams will think, hey, they're 23rd. Hey, we play the Vikings this week. It should be an easy win. Sure. Think that. That's exactly what we want you to think. Because I think they're going to open up some eyes and break some hearts. And I'm all for that.
Yeah, it's we'll see. We will see. I will say the Vikings have a history of overachieving with little to no expectations. 1998, middling expectations. I believe they were projected to finish third in the NFC Central. And they almost made the Super Bowl. 2000, expectations were middling because an aging roster, Dante Culpepper's a complete unknown. They just lost Jeff Christie and Hall of Fame guard Randall McDaniel to free agency. You had guys like John Randall and Chris Carter who were in their mid-30s. It was a massive unknown. If they win one more game at the end of the year, they host the New York Giants, and they probably win that game. We can get into it another time, but there were some major audio issues in that game that actually changed NFL rules, believe it or not. And that was kind of like, I believe, the beginning of the advent of Bluetooth as a whole. So it's very interesting. But yeah, no expectations. 2017, expectations were middling as well because Sam Bradford had the great start, finished really poorly. The offensive line was like, man, this team, I don't know. And 13-3, NFC Championship game. So historically, the Vikings, at least in my lifetime, I can't speak for the Purple People Eaters because, let's be honest, there probably weren't no low expectation years once the Purple People Eaters really came into power. That you had the Purple People Eaters, well, there were expectations there. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. But let's get into this because I don't want to keep you guys here all night. It is 4th of July weekend. I smoked another salsa this weekend, and oh my God, is it good. And I've got a pork butt that's already been seasoned for 48 hours. It's going on the smoker Wednesday night for Thursday afternoon. Ooh, yeah, cannot wait for that. But let's talk about it. We're going to just do position by position in quick breakdowns, and I'll kind of really hit home guys who might be a little bit of a surprise, okay? Quarterback. It's just two guys, Nick Mullins and Jaron Hall. And if you want to keep tabs on this, I do have an article for the for the offense up on the Sporting News right now. The defense posts on Tuesday morning. So if you're listening to this after Tuesday morning, you're just fine. You can click on it. But live guys, you'll have to listen to it. Look, the Vikings aren't keeping 4. Is J.J. McCarthy going to show enough to prove he's ready to be the backup from day one? And does Jaron Hall show enough to show that, hey, I'm worth keeping as a developmental option behind J.J. McCarthy and be a valuable, inexpensive backup for the next 2 seasons after 2024? Because that's what you have him for now. Inexpensive backup quarterback. You need that. Nick Mullins is inexpensive, but he is a trade piece. The Vikings traded for him a couple years ago, remember? They gave up a 7th-round pick in 2025 to get him. And in 2023, 2025 7th is basically nothing. So doing that for another team might be advantageous if they want a quality, true backup quarterback on their roster. Something to keep in mind that if those two things happen, Mullins could be the guy out the door. And if you trade him, you save about $1.8 million in salary cap space. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Now that's going to be replaced with about $750,000. So you're really going to save $1.1 million in cap space. But hey, that's still a good chunk of change that can go somewhere else next year or even this year. Running back, Kene Nwangwu, Dwayne McBride, and Myles Gaskin. I am not sold on Kene Nwangwu making the team at all because the way this new return is going to set up, to me, it feels like it's going to be a wide zone play. Nwangwu's vision in wide zone stinks. It's so much different to view it from a running perspective then you're going to be viewing it from a perspective of everybody sprinting at you. It's different ways of seeing the field. It's different ways of reacting. And because everything's going to be right in front of you, it's going to be harder for me to trust Wongwu when he just hasn't been able to get on the field as a running back because his vision stinks. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this ends up playing out. I genuinely have no idea. But Wongwu's on the bubble. And McBride hasn't shown anything. He's got to show a lot. You have to be able to play him on third down for him to make this team. Not just pass blocking, catching the ball. And we didn't really see a lot of that at UAB. He caught 9 passes. We didn't see a lot of that this past training camp. We're going to have to see a lot of it. And that special teams utility too. Both those things, Myles Gaskin has. He's got the third down utility. He's got the special teams acumen. And if Wongwu shows that he's just not going to be a good returner in this style of return, because that's the key. He was great in the old style, second team All-Pro in 2022. But in the new style, can he survive? I don't know. And that's a worrisome thing. Gaskin, to me, is the most likely to make the team out of this bunch. Dave, any comments on quarterback and running back here before we kind of move on?
No, other than the aforementioned signing of the running back today. And his chances of making the team, I think, is slim. He's going to have to prove that he's fully healthy and ready to rock and roll at 100%.
Yeah.
But I don't disagree in any bit of that. Now, I think Kene has a good chance to succeed as a kick returner, but it all depends on how they're going to do it.
Yeah, everything depends on a lot. Odie, why did you have to fart? I'm going to have to smell that while doing this show now.
And as far as the kick return, there are some teams that may just say, screw it. Instead of starting at 25, you're going to start at the 30. We're going to blast it through the end zone anyways.
I think, Dave, in that situation, I think it's the 35.
No, they adjusted it. It was originally at 35. They adjusted it to only the 30. Now, the ones that are attempting the squib kicks, that's going to be interesting because with squib, it's still got to go airborne and land in the landing zone. It can't land in front of it. So that's going to be an interesting non-conventional squib if they try that. But then again, it takes somebody with talent that can watch the ball, have it bounce in front of them, pick it up, and then, find the hole or follow the blockers. This whole new kickoff thing is going to be a big deal as we see how the league deals with it. And I suspect teams will try different approaches, and that Team A may do it this way, Team B may do it that way, and Team C does it in a completely different way, and Team D is the one that's, screw it, we're blasting it through the end zone.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that manifests itself. And we've talked about the squib kick possibility. The only media reports that I've seen of anybody who's seen a team practice this was the Green Bay Packers. And the Green Bay Packers were practicing that squib kick, which is why you ended up mentioning it, Dave, because it's very interesting. And I'll tell you, the second this became a thing, all those special teams coaches called their kickers and be like, hey, boom, 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 boom. Do these things. Practice. We need to be ready. And you have an off season. You get a kicker on a field, 100 footballs, ready to go. All right. We got to blitz through this. There's a lot of positions to cover. Wide receiver. The names here are going to be pretty simple, but there's one surprise. Deshaun Jones, Ty James, Thayer Thomas, Malik Knowles, Lucky Jackson, Tristan Jackson, and Jalen Naylor. Naylor's on this list for one reason. He can't stay healthy. Kevin O'Connell essentially called him out in a press conference saying he's not healthy, but he's really good when he is. And that's paraphrasing, by the way. So don't get on my case. But we're going to see. I think the 4 locked in are Jefferson, Addison, Brandon Powell, and Trent Sherfield. Sherfield is such a good special teamer that he can be wide receiver 6. I think he still makes the team because he's that good. And he has been wide receiver 3 before, was with the Dolphins in 2022. He played last season with the Buffalo Bills in that special teams role, but Naylor's got to show something. He's got to stay on the field. I don't care how much the team likes him. Mike Zimmer, you can't make the team from the tub. You just can't. Unless you have like a first round pick guaranteed contract and you're in year one. That's about it. So you can't make the team from the tub. And Naylor is going to have to figure that out. Because let me tell you, if he doesn't, bye. That's simple. And it has nothing to do with him being bad. Can't stay on the field.
It needs the nutritionists and the trainers to get with him and make sure he's getting all his vitamins and everything possible to stay healthy is what he needs to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Tristan Jackson's another one. I think he has like a 5 to 10% shot of being wide receiver 3. Alec Lewis of The Athletic had a really interesting comparison for him. And I think Lewis is the one who's apt to make the comparison because he covered the Kansas City Royals before coming to Minnesota. Called him a quadruple A player. And if you don't follow baseball, quadruple A player means you're too good to be in the minors, but you're not really good enough to be an everyday starter. You're like that third or fourth bench guy, which, I mean, it's still a pretty good gig. You got to play baseball for a living in the pros. That rocks. But there's just a ceiling for you. And he made that comp for Jackson. I think it makes sense. I do think that he could be maybe wide receiver 3 because he's flashed in training camp quite a bit. He's flashed in the preseason. Maybe you can get some more out of him in those like condensed 3 wide receiver sets. He's been with Kevin O'Connell since he came into the league out of Syracuse. Maybe there's more to it. I don't know, but it's something to keep an eye on. Tight end will be pretty simple though, Dave. Nick Muse, Robert Tonyan, N'Keal Harry, Trey Knox, and Sammy Reyes. Now, Reyes is the international pathway player. But as we learned last year with Junior Aho, you can just cut him and stash him on the practice squad. Because while he's a free roster spot, you still have to account for his salary on the books. What's cheaper? If the guy's going to play, keep him on the active roster. Hell yeah. But if he's not going to play, put him on the practice squad. Give him the $12,500 a week instead of a minimum salary of $750. With Reyes, I think it might be closer to $1 million because of his vested years, and go from there. The interesting thing here is Robert Tonyan. Judd Zulgad wrote a column for us at the Sporting News today, talking about how the absence of TJ Hawkinson really opens the door for Tonyan to be the guy. Tonyan could be your starter day one.
I think he is going to be the starter day one because TJ isn't going to be ready.
Well, they love Johnny Munt. We'll see. That's a wild card to me. It's not a guarantee. I think that Tonyan's going to be the starter, but I don't think you can write it down in pen or anything like that. It'll be fascinating to see what happens there, but it's a non-zero chance that Tonyan still gets cut, which is why he's on the list. Muse, are you going to get anything from him? Tight end is historically difficult to develop, and it takes a long time. So the fact that he's going into year 3 as a 7th round pick and he's still kind of on the roster bubble is really not that big of a deal to me. I think it makes a lot of sense. We'll find out if he's going to evolve in anything. Trey Knox is the guy to watch because he did not test well, but his game athletic score, if you watched the show with Max Chadwick a few weeks ago, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. We talked UDFAs. We got some really interesting tidbits on GPS data. That GPS data is fascinating. You're going to want to go check that out. All right, let's move on to offensive tackle. Only 3 guys on this list. Doug Nestor, Spencer Rowland, both UDFAs, and 6th round pick, Walter Rouse. I think Rouse is making the team. I also don't think it's set in stone. If Nestor or Rowland just way outperforms him, which I don't see happening, but you can never count anything out, Rouse could end up on the practice squad. He's a 6th round pick. There's not a lot of investment into him. Now it's more than a UDFA, but it's not a ton. So there's a realistic chance, I don't know, 10, 15% that he ends up missing the final 53. So just something to keep an eye on. I don't think it's a guarantee. And lastly, interior offensive line. Henry Bird, Jeremy Flax, Tyrese Robinson, Dalton Reisner. This is the shocker. And I saw Mike Sullivan in the chat was talking about how he would prefer Ingram to get cut and Reisner to be the starter at right guard. I'm going to be honest. I think Ed Ingram's better than Dalton Reisner. I don't think it's particularly close. Ingram's flaw is he's a heavyweight puncher. He's a little inconsistent because he tries to kill you instead of just being content knocking you down. He wants to go for the big blow, and he needs to control that a little bit. That's where the flaws are. It's not because of lack of technique. It's because his technique style is, for lack of a better term, a little bit reckless. It can cause him to get beat a little more often. But here's the thing. He's got all the requisite foot speed that you want. He can run zone and gap concepts. Reisner can't climb to the second level worth a damn. It's why he stinks at run blocking. He can't climb. He can't pick up second level defenders. He can't do those things. And that's been a constant. I am not a fan of Dalton Reisner as a starting guard for the Minnesota Vikings. And that might be a hot take to some people. Like, people like him. I think the dude is likable. I would love to go out, have a couple Busch Lights with him. Not a sponsor, but could be. And just hang out and shoot the breeze. On the field, I don't want him as my starting guard. I think the Vikings will be better off with Blake Brandel and Ed Ingram at starting guard. Dave, your thoughts, sir?
Hey, I said it yesterday. And if you all missed it, go watch two old bloggers as I break down in the second half of the show interior offensive linemen, how they develop, who is good, who's not good, where the range is that you want to be. And it's all broke down. And I want good ones. Reisner, though he had a good pass blocking grade, and he did not give up a sack, as Mike said, is not the best guard we can have because he just flat out, he's at the bottom when it comes to run blocking of the 32 starters. He is that bad. And there are guys that didn't start that were better than he was at that portion of the game. And you need to be a little bit more well-balanced to make the offense hum. I'll sacrifice a little bit of pass blocking to get a more effective run game so that we aren't worried about having to throw on 3rd and 8 and 3rd and 9, and that we can open up the playbook if we're at 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 4 and they want to throw a pass. That's why I think Reisner very well may not make the club. And I do believe Ed Ingram, and as I went through yesterday, the key year for development on linemen is year 3. That's when they make that big jump. Ed's going into year 3. As of year 2, he's an average guard or slightly below the mean, but just barely. So I suspect this year he's going to take the big jump, and I'd take him any day of the week over Dalton Reisner. Now, Dalton is a entertaining human being. Absolutely. He looks like a fun guy to be around. I'd love to talk to him. Love to talk football. But like you said, he doesn't have a whole game. If he had a whole game, this would be an easy decision. So that's what I'm going with. Now, it's going to be curious who stays and who goes. You didn't have Juergens on there. Juergens is a 7th rounder. Juergens may or may not make the team. I hope he does. He plays both center and guard. And I hope he steps up to become a good center, but we'll find out. We don't know. He may not make it. I want to have a center in the developmental pipeline because I worry about our center, Garrett Bradbury, and, of course, I worry about how Blake Brandel's going to make the transition over on that side as well. It's going to be interesting. And if anybody noticed, I have, who was it? Not Roland. Nestor? Who did I have on the cover today, on the thumbnail? It was Tyrese Robinson. Tyrese is another one that may not make the team. Most likely won't.
Yeah. I'm intrigued. I'm really intrigued. We'll find out. I really do think Jurgens is making the roster. I probably should have had him on here, but
I think he is. But I want to see.
I think my big thing with Reisner is I think he's gone if he stinks during camp. Where Jurgens, he's a 7th round pick. If he has some struggles, that's fine. They understand that coming in. It's a different set of expectations because they're in different places in their career. There's a reason why Reisner was available in May. There's a reason for it. And because he was available that late, well, he's going to be more expendable to the Vikings. Look, would it stink to have 1.1 million dead? Sure. But you save 1.3. And I'm sorry, like Reiser's just people got really attached to him. They like the idea of him. It just doesn't click on the field. All right. Let's move on to defense.
Well, before we get there, Mike, they don't draft road graders because most everything that's come up to now is for a zone system. I would say Ed is more closer to a road grader than especially Garrett Bradbury. Now, a lot of the guys that start out well and score well and do well as guards or centers in the league are your bigger, more powerful guys. And I do like a gap, power gap scheme. And we mixed in a little bit of power gap last year, and I thought they did rather well on it. Our problem last year, I don't think, was the run blocking as much as it was the running back. And that has changed this year.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to defense. Defensive line. We've got 6 guys on here, Dave. Jalen Redmond, Tyler Manoa, Taki Taimani, Jonah Williams, and Levi Drake Rodriguez. That leaves 4 guys that I think are making the team. Harrison Phillips, Jonathan Bullard, Jerry Tillery, Jaquelin Roy. I think 1 or 2 people.
Yeah, but they're going to keep more than 4. Are you talking
no
interior?
Guaranteed. Yeah, I'm just talking interior. I think 4 are guaranteed, and then you have the rest fighting for 1 to 2 spots. I do think that they're going to keep 5, maybe 6. Last year they kept 5. Wouldn't shock me if they keep 5 and stash an extra 1 on the practice squad for elevations. And I'm really intrigued to see how this plays out. I like the idea of Tyler Manoa. I don't know how he's going to work out in the NFL, but he's a versatile guy. He's a big guy. He also played left tackle in 2022. So he's got versatility, which to me is just fascinating. That he spent a season playing left tackle before going back to defense. And before left tackle, he was on the defensive line. So can you get something out of him? I don't know. I think Levi Drake ends up making the team because it sounds like he's just a big ball of energy and he's been performing well during the offseason activities. He needs some time in the weight room. He needs to keep gaining a little bit of weight. I think they're going to have him play nose, which I know got a little bit of pushback early on, but it feels like he's going to play nose. Speaking of nose, Delton asks which of these guys clearly resembles like a nose tackle. Taki Taimani. Yeah, Taki. The rest of these guys are more kind of 5 techniques. I think next year the Vikings are going to do whatever they can to get a true beef boy. They're going to try and get that nose. Now, you got to remember, you don't need to be 350 pounds to play nose tackle. You need to be able to 2-gap. Byron Murphy II, when we were talking about him coming out this year, played more true nose tackle than Tavondre Sweat because he was so good at handling double teams. You need to be good. Norsefius believes that Levi Drake Rodriguez gets sniped if we try to stash him. I agree. I think this could be an Andre Carter situation where you got to keep him on the roster just to make sure you keep him in the building. Only a few players get sniped, But it's not just about getting sniped after the 53-man roster cutdown. It's putting him on the practice squad and then somebody sniping him in week 4. Because that happens. That happens a lot. Myles Gaskin got sniped from the Vikings, and then they ended up getting him back later on in the year. So we'll find out. Edge rusher. This one's pretty simple. You only have 3 guarantees. You have Dallas Turner, Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel. Van Ginkel, keep an eye on him because he's still recovering from that Liz Frank. So your edge rusher on the bubble guys, Bo Richter, Owen Porter, Gabriel Murphy, Jihad Ward, or Jihad. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. One of the two is correct.
Jihad Ward is how I've heard it pronounced.
Jihad, okay. Andre Carter II and Pat Jones II. Now, here's the thing with Pat Jones. He is so solid. He's just a stalwart kind of player where I think he's going to make the team unless somebody behind him wows and makes him expendable. It's going to be more on other people and less on Pat Jones and whether he makes the team. Where if Andre Carter, who by all accounts hasn't really looked the part so far during offseason activities, if he goes into training camp, just balls out, just as great, then all of a sudden now you have a champagne problem, which we're going to keep using that term because Kwesi started using. Yeah, it's just great. So you have a champagne problem in, all right, well, Pat Jones is good. We like to keep him, but we're not going to lose out on the potential of Andre Carter. So we're going to let Pat Jones go. I think that is a plausible situation here. Not a guarantee, plausible. And that could go the same with Gabriel Murphy if Murphy just balls out right away. Owen Porter and Bo Richter are both interesting players. Richter, I think, is going to make the team if he does, based on special teams acumen. He's a 99th percentile athlete for an inside linebacker. He's played both inside linebacker and edge at Air Force. He's kind of got shorter arms. I think they're 31 inches instead of 30 and 1/2 inches. But he's explosive. He's very, very quick. And he gets penetration fast. And that's really big for how Brian Flores wants to play. And he loves having multiple edge rushers on the field, which Mike Sullivan says keep 6 interior and 4 edges. I think it's going to be 5 and 5 because I believe Brian Flores views edges as more valuable in those third down passing situations than defensive linemen. And you know what? I think he's right. I don't have all the data points in front of me because there are going to be ones that skew where if you have an Aaron Donald, a Chris Jones, an Ed Oliver, you're going to want those guys on the field. But if you don't, I'd rather have Jonathan Grenard just kick him inside a little bit and you have Dallas Turner and Andrew Van Ginkel, and you can be really, really versatile that way. So I expect them to keep 5 and 5.
Turner rush from the inside too.
Mm-hmm. Length matters a lot. Grenard, 35.5-inch arms. Turner, 34.5-inch arms. If you can prevent them from getting their hands on you and driving you, that's half the battle. Inside linebacker, I believe there are only 2. Count them, 2 players with guaranteed roster spots since Blake Cashman and Ivan Pace Jr. Brian Asamoah II, Camus Grugier-Hill, Dallas Gant, Abraham Beauplan, KJ Cloyd, all in the bubble. Asamoah is a very interesting one because third round pick. He was the 66th overall pick, so second pick in the third round. Essentially a late second. Like those values are about one and the same. But he went there and barely played at all last year. Why? Struggling to be a consistent tackler and just not really translating well to what Brian Flores wants to do. And I think the 2022 draft is more about drafting for scheme than drafting overall talent. And I think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah really learned something. Now, with corners, it's a little different. You kind of have to draft corners based on scheme. Some guys are talented enough where you just draft them because they're that good. But when you're drafting in the middle rounds, you want to draft for what you're going to be using them for rather than just, hey, I think this guy's better, because with corners, scheme matters a lot. You don't want to draft a pure zone corner to play in a heavy man coverage scheme. You don't. So that's why the draft picks of Mekhi Blackman and Kyrie Jackson to play in this scheme, I think matter a lot. And that we're going to have that conversation here when we get to corner. But this linebacker group's going to be interesting because Grugier Hill is a special teams ace. Dallas Gant was a special teams ace in college, over 1,000 special team snaps. So could he get that fourth spot if he absolutely wows during the preseason? I think it's plausible. I don't think it's likely, but it's a possible outcome, and we have to be prepared for that. The team's apparently high on Abraham Beauplan, who was a UDFA out of Marshall last year and spent some time on the practice squad. Look, inside linebacker is an interesting position, and it's also one if you have enough athleticism you can develop, which is why I have not given up on Brian Asamoah yet.
It will be interesting to see if Brian actually makes it. But I agree, he's on the bubble.
Yeah. All right. Cornerback. This is going to ruffle some feathers. Okay. AJ Green III, Jalen Williams, Dwight McGlothern, and these three: Andrew Booth Jr., Shaquille Griffin, and a Caleb Evans. I think they're going to keep Byron Murphy Jr., they're going to keep Bakai Blackman, and they're going to keep Kyrie Jackson. I think one of those last three that I named, Evans, Griffin, and Booth Jr., are going to be off the team. And one of the interesting things about talking about this group is, who do you cut bait on? Norsefius wants to cut bait on Seam, Booth Jr., and Asamoah. But it's tough. Year 3. Now, I think it's fair to say that the draft has been incredibly underwhelming. I also don't think that you can fully judge these picks until after we get about halfway through the season. Why? Year 3 is oftentimes when players step up and show who they're really going to be. It's hard to transition to the National Football League. I said it on Purple Daily on Draft earlier today. We get spoiled by guys like Justin Jefferson who come in and are great right away. Guys like Christian Darrisaw, guys like CJ Stroud. And we forget sometimes that players need time to grow and develop. Now, it could easily be that these guys just don't develop and they just stink. But I think we need to give them until about halfway through the year before we give a full judgment on them. Because development happens. It's real. Just look at guys like Geno Smith. Baker Mayfield showed a lot of development from the end of that Browns run into last season when he was great for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and they paid him big money. All those things matter. And I would rather take these guys for another year and try to see if I can develop them and see if I can get anything out of them. And if you can't, you tried. You gave them every opportunity to not just make the roster, but do great things. And they just didn't. And it's okay to cut bait. But I'm going to be cautious about cutting them a little bit too soon. And I think doing so at this exact moment would be a little bit too soon. Now, if they are absolute ass during training camp, I think it's completely fair to cut them. But if they're solid, keep them around. Because you drafted them in the top 66 for a reason. Because Steen was 32, Booth was 42, Asamoah was 66. So just cautiously optimistic. Freedom Thinker 1984 thinks that Griffin will be on the team. He got a lot of praise during OT and minicamp. I agree. I think he's probably going to be on the team. However, if you have guys that are younger that just ball out, he could be the expendable one. And that's why he's on the list. And that's the big thing with this list. Not all these guys are truly on the bubble, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. I can't 100% put these guys on the roster. And with Griffin and the wealth of talent that you have on the roster right now at corner, even though it's not high-end talent, I think it's important to have that conversation. It's important to have a discussion about what these guys are and what they could be. And if you get 90th percentile performances from Blackman, Jackson, Booth, and Evans, well, do you really need Shaq Griffin at that point? Because you have 5 guys that you're going to be comfortable with playing regular snaps? that's where he could miss the roster. It's possible. So just keep it in the back of your mind. Keep an open mind with corner because there's a lot of different possibilities here. Michael, I see your comment. We are going to talk about that after the last position group because I want to hear about food. All right.
Now, but you got to remember, especially on defense and across the lines, we haven't started hitting yet. They've got to go through training camp, and we've got to see these guys in pads before some of these real evaluations come out. Just because they're running around and looking good in shorts and T-shirts, that's wonderful. But once you put on the pads and start hitting and popping, things change. And that's where we want to see some of these players step up. At least I do.
Okay. Now, safety. 3 names on here. One of them, you may not even be aware he's a safety. Lewis Cine, Theo Jackson, Najee Thompson. Yes, Najee Thompson, according to Alec Lewis, and I don't know if it's made the change on the roster page yet. Najee Thompson's moved to safety, which one, it's probably better for him because he just didn't have good enough athleticism to play corner. 2, it doesn't matter. He's not going to play safety anyways. He is a special teamer, which is why when I do my 53-man rosters, I keep him with the specialists. I don't even put him on defense. And that's not an insult to him. That's just the reality of what the situation is. So
I think it was the team that announced he was moving to safety.
I don't know if that was officially announced, but I know Alec Lewis wrote about it. So
okay. I thought, like I said, I thought it was the team, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, hey, whatever it is, he's moved to safety. Theo Jackson, I really like. The team likes him. He's obviously ahead of Lewis Cine on the depth chart, but you have Jay Ward, who the team has more investment in, and he is more of a hybrid, that versatile guy who can be a chess piece, play outside, play inside corner, play in the box, play a deep middle. He can do a lot of different things for you in that versatility element, especially considering that he's growing within the position you're developing him. I think he's got a roster spot, unless he's just absolute ass. And then maybe, but I don't see that being plausible. I think he has never shown himself to be absolute ass. He's shown some good things. There's a reason why he's playing, and he was really good on special teams. That matters. Cine, he's got to show something. He's got to show it fast. He's got to show it now. If he doesn't, watch him be a Jalen Reagor-like trade out the door. Somebody's going to want to take a chance on him. And I would watch for Vic Fangio to be the guy to take that chance. He was drafted to play in that scheme. So we'll see. All right.
Let's go to the T-Bass. It's been a while since seeing you over here, buddy. Welcome back. You said anyone on the 3rd year or beyond, do you take the best player to keep on the team? Draft position doesn't matter at that point. And I agree. I would say if they're in their 3rd year and they're not showing development, I don't care where we drafted them.
Yeah. I do think guys that are entering their 3rd year, if they haven't shown that they're a significantly better player than a guy who's still on a rookie deal, but earlier on it, like year 1 or year 2, think Armon Watts. Watts got cut because he was making like $2.9 million, and the Vikings saved a good amount of money without really sacrificing production. That matters. That matters a lot. So we'll kind of find out. All right, Gary's here just in time because we are going to talk about food. We're going to go to Michael's comment to finish out. Look, we need some positive reviews on Apple Podcasts. If you guys could go give a 5-star review, leave a comment about how you like the show, and tell me what is your specialty when it comes to cooking. What are you great at? I made smoked salsa this weekend. It's gotten rave reviews around the neighborhood. And I've got a pork butt that's literally going to sit seasoned for 96 plus hours before going on the smoker. Like, we are having a good time. But food is what we do. 5-star reviews. Go put a review. What is your specialty? I want to read it. All right. Michael Endicott says that he made stuffed bacon wrapped chicken breast with a black bourbon sauce, and baked mac and cheese. Dog, if you can make a good baked mac and cheese, you can cook. It is not easy to do a mac and cheese. It isn't. It's a difficult thing to really master because cheese, liquid cheese, is tough. You got to make a roux. You got to, you can't use shredded cheese. You got to shred that yourself. Because if you use shredded cheese, it actually has an anti-clumping agent, which will prevent it from liquidizing. Now, you can add a little bit to your liquid cheese, but it's not the same. So if you can make a good baked mac, hell yes. And I'm really excited for some of the stuff. Okay. T-Bass cooks an awesome iguana on the grill. I'm going to say this, and I don't mean any disrespect. Are you Mama from The Water Boy? I've never heard of iguana being cooked.
Oh,
I'm
no.
fascinated.
It is a staple down in Florida. They cook the shit out of it.
Okay. Interesting. You're going to have to tell me more about that, T-Bass, because I've never heard of anybody cooking iguana. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay.
Norsefius, I'm blanking on what website you showed me.
Yeah.
Pan roasted good carp. Yeah. I was given a recipe on how to cook carp by my stepdad growing up. He said, you catch the carp, you nail the carp to a board, and you stick it in the smoker. And when all said and done, you pull the fish off the board, throw the fish away, and eat the board. That's the best way to eat carp.
All right. Lastly, I'm gonna make a comment to Wes Dryden saying before Scene's injury, he was actually trash. No, before Scene's injury, they were slowly developing him and they were about to give him snaps before he broke his leg. They said before the game against New Orleans Saints, they were going to start working him in. He played 2 defensive snaps. So I don't think it's fair to say he was trash. He was just a rookie. After that, I think we can have a different conversation. That's all for tonight, everybody. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. I want to hear about your food. What is your specialty? Throw it in Apple Podcasts and give us 5-star review and write a review. And we're going to talk about some of those on the show when we see them. And hey, you know what? If you're a YouTube person only, throw it in there. But we need some good Apple Podcast reviews, guys. And we would be incredibly grateful if you would be willing to give us one. Until then, we may have a show Wednesday. We may not because of the holiday. It all depends on kind of what's going on in my life. And I will check out Wild Fork Foods. I'm guessing that has something to do with iguana. I will take a look.
No, that's no. And now I remember Norsefius. No, go check it out. It's good.
Yeah, I'm very interested to hear about iguana. With that, thank you guys so much for joining. If we're not here on Wednesday, I want to wish everybody in America listening and watching a happy 4th of July. Everybody who's not an American, I wish you a great Thursday. Until then, I'm Tyler.
Hey,
he's
it's
Dave.
Happy Canada Day for our Canadian watchers.
Oh, it is Canada Day. Unless you're in Quebec, happy moving day. I found that out yesterday. Apparently on Canada Day, it's like National Moving Day. So enjoy. Have a wonderful day. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!